Thanks for checking out the I Am More Than podcast. I'm your host, Jordan Wessel, a former Miss Arizona USA professional model and founder of More Than Inc. This week's guest is an athlete, model, podcast host, influencer, and the reigning Miss Indiana USA. From playing professional volleyball to placing third runner-up at Miss USA, her athlete mentality has served her well. In this episode, we chat about finding her identity in college, playing volleyball overseas, pageantry, and how to embrace imperfection. She also takes us behind the scenes of what it's like being a COVID queen. She's unapologetically herself, and she wants to inspire others to do the same. Please welcome Alexis Lete. Welcome to the I Am More Than podcast, Lete. I'm so excited to have you here.
Oh, thank you. I'm so excited to be talking with you today.
I can't wait. And we started talking a little bit before Miss USA really happened. And so it's been really exciting for me to be able to watch kind of just your journey unfold. And what I really respect about you is you have this undeniable confidence that it's not a false confidence. And I think you portray that really well. And I'm excited for people to really get to know you. And I'm excited to get to know your journey because you have a history. And I'm excited to dig into it.
Yeah, I think everybody has a history. You know, it makes them who they are.
Yeah. And you just got off the Miss USA stage. I watched you, Monday night? And you placed in the top 5 of Miss USA. That is such a huge achievement. So a round of applause for you.
Thank you. Thank you. I kind of forget sometimes that it is like a really big deal and a huge accomplishment. I'm just kind of like, yeah, that just happened.
It's huge. And I think you've probably been on cloud 9 afterwards, doing all of your interviews, making your rounds, that once the chaos kind of settles, I think it's something that achievement you can carry with you literally your whole life. Like you'll never get that chapter back. So I really just wanted to congratulate you on that. And I think something that was really cool to watch is not only did I see your confidence shining on stage, but the way that you handled yourself from the beginning to the end was really cool. So I'd love to kind of talk about how you prepared yourself, not just physically, but mentally and emotionally for that chapter to be on stage in front of millions of people.
Yeah, I honestly prepared like an athlete. I mean, I've been an athlete my whole life. So I grew up playing sports and then I got really serious about volleyball, got a full ride volleyball scholarship to play at a D1 college. And then I went overseas to play in Switzerland professionally for a little bit. So being a competitor is nothing new to me. I kind of knew how to train. I knew how to get my mind right going into it. And I honestly took my volleyball skills and what I've learned throughout the years and applied that to pageantry, which sounds crazy, but sports and pageants are actually incredibly similar.
And I really like the fact that you do talk about sports so much in it because I think pageant girls have such a false stereotype surrounding them. And I think it's cool that you have 2 huge aspects of yourself that you brought together. And I do want to dive into that definitely and understand kind of what made you want to dabble in both sides of you. But as you're saying, just preparing like an athlete, how do you mentally prepare yourself to be able to hold your head high no matter what the outcomes are?
I really enjoy reading books. In college, our coaches would give us books to read to get us to perform how they want, like mentally on the court. So that's what I did for Miss USA. I've read Brené Brown's Dare to Lead, which was a great book about how to be a fearless leader and be vulnerable because there's power in vulnerability. And then the most recent one I read was Can't Hurt Me. And it's by this guy who was a Navy SEAL. And he actually was raised in Indiana. And it talks about all of his hardships and everything he overcame and how at the end of the day, he always wanted to push and be the best version of himself. And reading that book while preparing really made me think like I can get uncomfortable doing this to like produce better results of this. Like I can stay up late and study this topic, or maybe I don't want to really learn about this topic because it's a little bit political, but I need to learn about this topic. I need to push myself so I can be educated for when I get on stage, for when I talk to this audience. So that book really helped me. And then I also studied vocab. So I really feel like when I talk to people and I hear people use big words or sound educated, you know, it really makes me put them on a higher pedestal than somebody who might use, you know, more normal language or smaller language. And so I was trying to just indulge in all different options of my vocab and what I could express and expand on in that realm. And Yeah, I had a few people say that's interesting to think about. But if you think about great responses, like Olivia Culpo, when she said, some people might be a little apprehensive, that made you think like, oh, what is apprehensive? Oh, it means they might be a little bit, dialed back or not understand or not like that. So I tried to focus on that. And then I also focused on honestly getting out in the community as much as possible and getting a microphone in my hand.
That's so
Yeah.
smart, because I think a lot of people underestimate when you can go and look at somebody who is on a public platform and they're
Mhm.
talking, and you can look at them and be like, oh, that's easy. I could totally do that. But when you get a microphone in your hand and you start talking
Mhm.
and have to articulate your thoughts very well,
Yeah.
especially with nerves rushing in, it is
Yes.
very difficult, whether you have a crowd of 2 or 2 million. So I think
Yeah.
that that's a really good thing that you did. And did you have a great pageant coach throughout this, or how did you know to do these things?
So I had one of my friend from high school's mom really enjoys pageantry. And so she kind of just helped me along every time I had a question. I had my directors, but they had other states they were running, and one of them is running for office. And I actually got new directors at Miss USA. So it was a very interesting year, and kind of who was helping me. I just kind of had to turn to my own resources for a lot of things and figure it out. Good old game of life, just playing its cards and me just getting dealt what I dealt and just using it to my advantage. So I went to 66 appearances before the lockdown. So at the end of November until March, and I got them all on my own. I always asked to be able to talk at the events. And so all those events slowly but surely built confidence to speak in front of a crowd. And, when I got on that stage and had a microphone in my hand talking in front of not just the 360 audience members, but, the millions of people that were tuning in on national television, I was like, okay, I've been in this position so many times before. I'm just going to be confident in what I say and, just act like I'm in a room here with the judges.
It takes a lot of wisdom to be able
Hmm.
to have that foresight, because a lot of
Yeah.
people, for me, I was at Miss USA, let's say in 2014. God, it's been some time, but I was young. I was 19 when I first went there. I think that
Mhm.
I didn't try to prepare myself for that moment because I didn't think that I would be in that moment. And now hindsight's 2020, because I didn't prepare to be in that, because I didn't
Yeah.
believe that I could get there. And I think that's why I can identify with your hustle so much, because now being 27 years old and looking back, I think
Mhm.
that there's a confidence aspect that you have to have. You
You
have to
have.
prepare as if you're going to be in that position. And if you're not, that's okay. But if you are, you got to be ready.
Yeah. I mean, I went into Miss USA thinking I was going to win. I mean, I came back to a fully packed apartment because I had packed up all of my stuff here because I was really going to Miss USA believing that I was going to be the next Miss USA. I believe that God had a purpose for all of the past traumas and all the past experiences that have happened to me to be a great leader. And, my sports background to be a great leader, all these things, I strongly believe that, I was placed in this position to do something great. And even though I did not win, I still believe that the path I'm on is to greatness, to something maybe even bigger than Miss USA. So I'm excited for all the hard work I've put in, and it's not going to waste. I'm still using every
Totally.
bit of news I read, of public speaking I gained, of the work ethic I gained in the gym, the way I learned how to treat my body with empathy and respect while not, depriving myself of any nutrients. I decided to make sure I had a healthy body on the Miss USA stage because you have to think, if you are Miss USA, you are a representation of what every woman can be. You are not just yourself. And I do not want any girl to look at me and think that she needs to starve herself or she needs to work out at the gym, X amount of crazy hours a day. I really wanted to do it in a healthy way to inspire people that you don't have to do anything crazy. You just have to be consistent and live a healthy life.
So well said. It sounds like you have some experience in these areas, and you were just talking about past experiences, past traumas that has
Yes.
gotten you to where you're at. Can you tell me
Yeah.
a little bit about life before this chapter? Let's say back to college, when
Yeah.
you're on a full ride scholarship. What's going on in your life? What is preparing you for the chapter that you're now in?
Yeah. So I remember being in high school and my coaches that helped me get my scholarship were like, college is going to be crazy. It's going to be so intense. You're just going to be, hustling all the time. And I remember getting to college and it was exactly that. We had coaches that made us run until girls were puking. They made us, wear the same uniform, look the certain part, be a certain way. And they kind of stripped us of our identity. And they told us to be this GW volleyball clone. And I thought that was just, the college way. That's how it's supposed to be until my sophomore year, girls started coming forward to our athletic director and saying, this is not okay what they're doing to us. And they're not treating us as human beings. They're treating us as, clones almost. And they're getting in our personal business and they're telling us what to eat exactly and telling us to do this and that. And they ended up getting fired. And we got new coaches my junior year. And these new coaches came in and they're like, express yourself and be whoever you want to be. And that was crazy because we had these coaches that wanted us to be clones. So I started modeling before I went to college. But when I got to college, these coaches that I first had told me I couldn't be a model. I couldn't express myself how I wanted on social media. I had to just post honestly bland images of me with captions that were tasteless and just put like something basic, like I had a great day today. And it was honestly so draining. I felt like I lost who I was. I felt like I wasn't able to be who I wanted to be. And part of the reason that I went to a college so far away from Indiana is because I wanted to break free of Indiana. I wanted to not change my identity, but be whoever I wanted to be. And so I went to this place thinking I could do that, where I had these coaches that were still putting, bars around me is what it felt like. And I then got these new coaches my junior year and they're like, express yourself, be whoever you want to be. We want to support you. That year I gained 10,000 followers on Instagram. And for me, that was huge because it was still in the part where it's like, oh my gosh, you get like the 10, you get the K after. Oh my goodness, that's so cool. And it's crazy because I just grew so exponentially in such a short amount of time because I was able to be myself. And I started modeling again. I had someone reach out to me, and literally 2 months after I had my first shoot back, like doing what I loved, I got somebody that called me from New York that asked me to come and do a paid shoot. So I got flown to New York to do a paid shoot, and it was amazing. I just felt like myself again. My volleyball started getting better because I was able to express myself, not feeling like a clone. And I have to attribute a lot of my success now to having coaches that allowed me to be whoever I wanted to be and to be somebody outside of just an athlete. And I think it's important for coaches, if anyone's a coach listening to this, to see your players as people. They're people before they're players, and then they're players. You have to think that volleyball is not going to last their entire life, but their character, their integrity, and what they learn from you will.
That's powerful. That's really powerful. And I think that there's a lot of discipline that has to come with being a successful athlete. I can't imagine being a college athlete. I wasn't one, but I've seen many of my friends that had to really dedicate their lives to their craft and didn't really have a huge identity on the side of that. And you had mentioned that after you graduated college, you then went to Switzerland. So this sport really was your identity. So tell me a little bit about that transition, starting a professional career with this sport that you loved.
So I didn't think I would ever be able to play professionally. Like when I first got to college and I had these coaches, they honestly made me feel pretty bad about myself. I was lacking confidence because of the way they treated me. They completely changed my whole swing, my arm swing, which, being a hitter, your arm swing is your everything. And so it wasn't until my senior year that my confidence had fully replenished. My cup became full again, and I was doing amazing. I had made all tournament team every tournament we played in except one. I was the most consistent player on our team. I was our team captain. I was the person that would be set if it was game point. I turned into that player that was just a powerhouse and truly believed in herself. And I had people saying, oh my gosh, do you want to go play overseas after this? And I had never thought about that because I thought it was never an option for me until I had the confidence to play like how I knew how I could play. And so when that door was open, I was like, you know what? I'm already graduating early. I could do this mid-season so I don't have to commit to a whole season of playing overseas. I can get a taste of it. You know what? I'm going to go for it. So a week before group of girls went overseas to like try out at different places and play around, I decided to pack up my bags and get going and do it too. So
Wow.
I played in different countries, and I really loved Austria. That was probably Innsbruck, to be
Oh my
specific.
goodness.
Yes, it
How
was
huge.
amazing.
I'm
Yes,
sure. So are you basically like set up like an athlete there? Are you living in like athlete housing? What was the cultural differences like? Take me through that.
Yes. So the cultural difference is not everybody spoke English. So that was interesting to navigate and be like, I want to go here, but people not understanding where even here means. So I'm like, like I would be very expressive all the time. And then I actually used Tinder a lot or Bumble, because that's how I could meet people that spoke English.
Oh, that's amazing.
I would go on these dates with these guys, and they would just kind of like show me the city wherever I went.
That's amazing.
It was great. So if you are listening to this and you're traveling, Bumble is the way to go. Just meet somebody to show you the city. You get a free dinner and a tour. So,
and how long were you there for?
Yeah, I was just there for about 6 weeks, or I think. Yeah. So it was like around 2 months, a short period of time, but I was there mid-season. So I was playing like while a girl was injured in her spot, like practicing with her team. So it gave me a taste of what it would be like to play over there for a full season. But as I was over there, I felt like there was an emptiness. I didn't feel like I was fulfilling my potential in life, if that makes sense. I really felt like my calling was to empower and inspire people. And I didn't feel like I was doing that by playing volleyball overseas. I lost a lot of connection with people over in the States. The times are different. No one was really worrying about what was going on in Switzerland. And so I was like, you know what, this was fun. This was really informative. I learned a lot. I gained some great friends and learned about the world, but I feel like my purpose is still greater than just volleyball, and I want to go back and I want to pursue and chase my dreams.
So then you come back to the States, and what's your next move?
Yeah, then I went to LA. I lived in LA for a little bit, and I literally came back and I just told my mom, I was like, hey, I bought a one-way ticket to LA. My mom was like, you did what? I was like, yeah, well, I want to be a game show host one day. I need to start, getting after it and going and doing it. She's like, do you have a job lined up? What do you have lined up? Do you have a house you're living in? I was like, no, and no.
Yeah. Which can sound very scary to a parent. I've been there. It's very scary.
Yes. So I was living on a friend's couch in LA and honestly just kind of Googling and searching different ways to, get into acting, get into modeling. And I've had agencies before, but they were smaller, from Indiana or from Southern Indiana. And so I was like, okay, I need to like find a bigger agency. I need to figure out how to act and do different things. So I got on a website that you can just pretty much submit to be in things. And I started acting. So I was in my first commercial out there for like casino. It was ASMR too. So it was so much fun.
Oh, that's great.
So that was fun. And then I actually booked a gig for something on Amazon Prime. And I just started networking and meeting people. And I really just felt like everything was kind of falling into place. And it was wild. And while I was out there, I really found a church that I loved. And I had never really found a church where I felt not accepted, but I felt like actually I could relate to.
Yep.
And so I started going to this church, and I've just started seeing things opening up in my eyes and like seeing my purpose and seeing how little things matter. And I think it's through that church and through having my eyes open to different signs that God or the universe or whatever people believe in, I really think that signs are real. And I started getting signs to compete for Miss Indiana USA.
Wow. Oh, I'm excited to unpack this because I am a big believer that there's already a plan for everybody. Mm-hmm. And I do think that I believe that everything happens for a reason. And when you put yourself out there, things do happen for you. Yes. It may not be what you think should be happening for you, but things do happen. There are signs if you can pay attention and listen to them and accept what they are, right? So I would love to hear, like, what are some things that you're seeing? How is this being conveyed to you that you were like, okay, I think this is actually something I need to go forward with?
Yes. So I was walking in my very first New York Fashion Week,
Love.
and I was like, oh my gosh, it's finally happening. Like, I wanted to be a model, and so many people told me my body was too athletic, I was too muscular. And to be there in my very first New York Fashion Week was just huge for me as a person, because I didn't do anything different. I didn't slim up or like stop eating or, stop lifting weights. I was just like finally found designers that supported me in my body type. And so I just felt like I was like breaking all kinds of molds and just, I was just so here for it. I also got body shamed by one designer, but boo-hoo on him. Anyways, I know. I was in this lineup and the girl in front of me was like, oh, do you do Miss USA? I see you being like a Miss USA kind of thing. And I was like, oh, well, that's very kind of you, but not really. I'm more of like an athlete. And she was like, oh, well, I think you'd be good at that. I was like, okay, thanks. Noted. And I didn't really think too much about it. And then about a week later, one of my best friend's sisters competed in Miss Puerto Rico years ago. And they were like, hey, my sister was talking about you. And she was just talking about how she thinks you should do Miss Indiana USA. And I was like, that's weird. Somebody in New York was just talking about Miss USA. And they're like, yeah, well, just think about it. I was like, okay, I'll think about it. And then in LA, I was looking for a new roommate, and somebody reached out to me. This person happened to be Miss Alaska USA. It was the only person who came and looked at my apartment. And I was asking her about her experience and telling her that I had been getting a lot of signs. And she's like, you need to do it. She's like, it will open so many doors for you. It's not even if you win Miss USA, but it's the connections, the people that will see you, it being on live television. And I was like, well, okay, when you put it like that, that's a great selling point. So then I texted my friend's mom, who is involved in pageantry. And I was like, hey, Raimi, do you think you could just call me sometimes? I just have a few questions I want to ask you. And she messaged back. She's like, oh my gosh, I was just thinking about you. Have you considered doing Miss Indiana USA? ? And I was like,
you're like,
this
okay.
is why. Yeah, I was like, this is why I want to talk to you. And this is also weird. So I called her and she was like, I think you should do it. I think you should go for it. If you live in LA any longer, you won't be an Indiana citizen. So this is really the last year that you'll have to compete as Miss Indiana, where you're from, where you're born and raised.
Yeah.
And I was like, you're right. And she's like, well, just, if you're still unsure, look at the date and see if it's something that you'd want to do. I looked at the date, and it happened to be at the end of the month that my lease in LA was up.
Wow.
So I was like,
so you were like, now I have to.
Yes. I was like, okay, God, I see you. This is literally the perfect timing that I couldn't have even crafted as well as this. So you
had no pageant experience in any way, shape, or form, right?
I did something when I was in high school. My mom made me do like this fair pageant. We have something called Harvest Homecoming. So I did that, but it was nothing like, Miss USA or anything. Like my talent in the one where I did when I was younger was I did comedy. I did like an Ellen skit.
Girl, I can see it.
Very different.
That's amazing. Yes, very different. And so then you walk into Miss Indiana USA, and are there nerves going through that it's an unknown thing, or were you pretty much set like, okay, I'm supposed to be here? So
I was pretty set. I did a lot of meditating when I found out and figured out that these are not just signs for a coincidence. These are not just signs that I'm making up. Like there's a purpose and I need to figure out why. So I remember like once I decided to enter in Miss Indiana USA, I went into the forest. This sounds a little hippie, a little weird, but I went into the forest with one of my friends and I just started journaling. I wrote down at the top of my journal, why is this happening? What is the purpose for me being Miss Indiana USA? And I just remember writing everything down about what I wish I had being a young girl in Indiana and what I think my message could be and what I think I could bring to the table as just being myself and inspiring people to do the same. And I, wrote down, I want to talk at this school and I want to talk at this school. And so really kind of writing my purpose and what my plan of action would be as Miss Indiana USA. And once I got that down, I understood my purpose and I understood that I wasn't going to compete in Miss Indiana USA as Alexis Lete, but I was going to compete in Miss Indiana USA to change a lot of people's lives and rewrite what people look at the youth in Indiana as. And I say that because I don't think people realize how much talent there is here and how much ability there is to go so much further than just your hometown.
It's beautifully said. The platform that pageantry does give you really is incredible, because I believe that every single woman already has, you have your influence, you have your voice, but I do think it gives you another platform to be able to elevate that and also reach people that you probably wouldn't have reached before, solely because you're stepping into opportunities that you normally wouldn't, like being more in the community, actually being able to make these appearances and have conversations with people and understand their experiences and their journeys. So I really do think that there's so many more aspects to pageantry than people do give credit to. And it also sounds like you were very present in your purpose. And I think that's really big, because there's a lot of people that will pray or manifest something, and they're so busy looking for the next blessing that they don't realize that what they wanted is happening to them right then and there. And I think when you have the ability to just kind of stop and be present, really incredible things happen. And it sounds like you were able to do that on a local level. And it sounds like that also translated to Miss USA. And I think that that's really just a testament of you. And whether that came through sports or whatever developed your mentality, I think that that's really incredible. And I'm just proud of you. I'm just hearing your story for the first time, but I think that's really great. And you had done so many local events before the shutdown. And I do want to talk about having this platform in such an unprecedented time, because your reign is different than every other reign that has ever come before you. What was it like preparing for Miss USA in a pandemic?
Yes. Well, being a COVID queen has definitely been interesting.
Oh, yes.
So I think all of us were kind of like, what do we do now? You know, there's girls that have been in parades, or they do speak at events or speak at schools or speak at all different types of in-person things. And we're like, okay, well, what do we need to do now? And, you know, Miss Universe organization gave us a lot of footage to have us do like a hashtag Universe United and show people doing things at home. But that wasn't enough for me. I really wanted to communicate with people and really get out and show my face to different people that could see me. Cause it's one thing about like posting, hey, I'm doing a workout, you can work out too. But it's another thing to, you know, interact with people and have that face-to-face connection. So during that time, I just tried to go on different lives of different networks and organizations here in Indianapolis. There's one that I went on, which is called Indie Fitness Magazine. And every Wednesday at, I think it was noon, I would be going live and doing a workout for them. And then I was zooming into classrooms, which was definitely different, but, you know, something that still works. Yep. You know, all the kids could see me, they could hear my voice. And I actually started my own podcast during the lockdown because I really want to share the message of women who have gone through something to inspire and empower other people. Because as women, I really think that society puts us to the standard where we have to have it all together. We can't make mistakes, or we can't have bad days, or, oh, she's being cranky, or, oh, she's, you know, a brat, or, oh, this, or, oh, that. And it's like, there's so much that we have to face as women. There's so much that we go to that people don't see behind closed doors. And I just love asking other women about their lives and their struggles and how they get through them to inspire and empower others. So my podcast called Empower Her came about during the lockdown. And that's been a way to almost have the same audience as I would as if I walked into a school or if I walked into a gymnasium, but just in a different way, in a different light.
Totally. And I think it's very easy to kind of sit back and let life happen to us. There's a lot that's out of our control right now. And I think it's another thing to kind of take what you do have control over and do something with it. And I think it's really cool that you still capitalized on your reign to be able to make an impact. I love that you started your podcast. I think that it's a really cool way to empower women. And it's also one of the main reasons I wanted a podcast, I wanted this company, was because just like you were saying, women struggle with so many different things behind the scenes, and we think that we're alone. We feel isolated in it, and that we can't be vulnerable, especially because there's a lot of people that vulnerability still is not viewed as a strength. And I think because women are kind of had this drilled into our heads for so long that we need to be strong, but not too strong. We need to be vulnerable, but not too vulnerable. We need to be authentic, but also make sure we look a certain way while we're doing it. And I think it's really cool when you get to know other people's stories and hear truthfully what they're struggling with, that then you can create some relatability. So I love that your podcast also does that. I think that's a really great resource. So as you're preparing yourself for Miss USA, we'll go into that again. You already really focused on the mental part of it. Once you're actually there, I'm mostly asking just for myself because I'm so curious how they actually handled you guys at Miss USA, just because they've never experienced this before either. So did you feel like you got the full experience? Are you happy with your experience?
No. We definitely did not get the full experience, but I think we got the best experience that they could possibly offer at this time. So we had so many, thank you. They had so many regulations and things and protocols that they had to abide by, to make sure that they're putting on a safe event. We got COVID tested before we even went to Memphis. And if anybody tested negative, then they would be disqualified from the pageant. So it was really important that we kind of quarantined and made sure we were being safe in our states before we headed to Memphis, because, if someone had it, they would be exposing all of the girls, all of the staff. And so it was very important that they did that test. And then once we got to Memphis, we were COVID tested again, and then quarantined, locked away in our own individual room until we got test results. And then the next morning we were able to move in with our roommate, and the roommate was the only person that we could take pictures with our mask off. And yes, so we also had different groups. So we had 4 different groups within the 51 girls, and you had to stay within your group the whole week. So we didn't really have the opportunity to mix and mingle too much with the other groups, I think just because they wanted to make sure that we were all separate and we weren't contaminating each other's space or areas. Yeah. And so it didn't really give us the opportunity. Like, I didn't even talk to Miss Mississippi who won. So I don't really know. Everyone's like, how is she as a person? I'm like, I honestly have no idea. I couldn't tell you. I mean, I'm sure they picked a great winner, but I wasn't able to talk to her as a person. That's so hard. That was, it was interesting. And every morning we had temperature checks. We had surveys to fill out. Whenever we were standing somewhere, we had to stand 6 feet apart. We wore masks literally all the time. So it was definitely a different year, and we weren't able to go out to eat anywhere in the city. So we always had dinners at the hotel banquet area. So it was a very different time than, the previous years when you look at them and they're just going all around the city, doing photo shoots everywhere, taking pictures, eating everywhere. We never really had like a cocktail dinner to get dressed up to. We weren't even able to go to the teen awards or the teen show. So we just had to watch it, on our laptops or on our TV. So it was definitely different, but like I said, there's nothing that they could have done better to make it happen.
Definitely. And it sounds like everybody's just doing the best they can. I'm glad you guys still got the experience where you were there. And now what's next for you? Now that Miss USA is done, what are you kind of preparing for your next steps?
Yes. Well, Miss USA was so much fun. It honestly felt like I was at an elite camp for volleyball, but like a glam version. I was like every day I would wake up and be like, oh my gosh. And my roommate was like, what? I was like, this is so cool. I was like, I don't think you understand. Like in volleyball, I would be sore right now and just like being like, oh, we have to go to the gym and work out. But like, I'm not sore. And now I'm like, oh, we get to go eat
so breakfast. Excited.
And she was like, I guess, yeah. So I do want to let people know that it was still a lot of fun. Like I had a blast, like definitely something that definitely something I was not used to, just totally different fun experience. And then, so what's next? So I placed 3rd runner up at Miss USA, And
Huge.
thanks. I want to be a game show host one day. So I am right now trying to get as much media as possible. And I'm also going to start my YouTube channel. I kind of have a YouTube channel, but it's just not popping with like content all the time. So now I'm going to be releasing pageant content because there's so much that people want to know or don't know. Like I would love to just debunk myths that people have about pageantry and also talk about me watching myself and how I felt on stage, especially during the final question and then the final statement where I kind of like had a little bit of a slip up and I was like, oh, you need to do your thing, and snapped. And I was like, I really just told the judges to do their thing. Okay.
What was that like for you after watching it? Like what emotions were you experiencing while watching yourself on stage?
Well, when I first saw, I saw my bathing suit performance and I was like, oh, I look good. I was like, it wasn't like too much. I think it was just like the perfect amount of elegance and grace, but also a little bit like sporty spice. And then my evening gown, I was like, this is powerful. This is exactly what I wanted. And then my first question, I was like, I nailed that question. Like, amazing. Honestly, crown this girl. And then, and then I got my final statement and I had climate change. And I just, in my mind, I was like, there's so much that we can do about climate change. I was like, we can have legislation, the Green New Deal, but we shouldn't do the Green New Deal. But we should also do things at home like recycling. So my mind was just going all over the place with how many different things that we can change and make better. Yeah. And so I was like, oh my gosh, like I want to think about where I want to go in the world too. So I was like, I want to travel to all these places. And if we don't fix climate change, I'll never be able to go. Yeah. And so I had all of these thoughts and just you could not consolidate all these thoughts I had into 30 seconds. And so looking back at it, I was like, my answer was really strong up to the point where I started going into too many different avenues. I was like, we need to fix legislation, but we also need to do things at home. You need to do your thing. And then I snapped and I laughed and I was like, as Miss Indiana USA. And I was like, as Miss USA. And I think that it was all good until I got to the point where I said Miss Indiana USA. And you could just tell within my facial expression and my thought, I honestly saw like the Miss Congeniality girl talking about, I love, what was it, like June 23rd or whatever day. It's a perfect weather, the perfect day. And in my mind, that was playing as I was talking. And then I started just like seeing memes everywhere. And I was like, get off, stop talking, end it. And I was like, as Miss USA. Oh, goodness. I just remember I was like, and then I went back to stand over in the top 5. And I was like, you know what? Hey, we did our best. Can't change that now. Now we're just going to rock it. We're maybe going to like use that as some leverage and tell people how to be resilient in the future. So I think that everything happens for a reason. And I think that God had a plan for me to do that because he knows that the strength that comes from being a champion and being an athlete in the past, that I see that as a step to something better and greater. And so totally. I saw my performance as just being so authentically myself and something that I think a lot of people can look at to not feel like they have to be perfect all the time.
Yeah. And I love that perspective because I also see a lot of grace in your answer. Yeah. And I think grace is so important for us to give to ourselves because one, nobody says that we're perfect. You weren't pretending to be perfect.
Yeah.
You owned it. And also you had done a video after that you were like, you got to start and finish strong. And you showed up and you did your final look and you had your head held high throughout the process. That taught so many people so many things right then and there. You could have handled it the direct opposite way. And I think you would have been ashamed of that. And you didn't, and I think that is everything that moment was supposed to be for you. And I just love your perspective. I love your confidence through it. And I love how open you are to talk to anybody and everybody about it.
Yeah.
Because it didn't define you. The way that you handled it defined you. And that's badass.
You're right. Oh, thank you. And it's funny that you mentioned that because as I was standing there and I knew we still had the final look, I was like, you know what? Should I just throw this final look and like maybe do like a rock sign or something that will go down in history. But then the athlete mentality inside me was like, no, this isn't over. You still have a chance to win. And so I went, and I remember I was like, I'm about to give them the best look and the best walk that they've ever seen. And I remember I was just like, I felt like powerful, like a woman that was there with a message, and that I just messed up 2 minutes ago, but you can see every woman can mess up in their life and still come back even stronger and more elegant and more graceful. And so I was like, I'm getting that pose. I was like, boom, this is me. You just saw me acting crazy, snapping at you, but this is me right now. And so, like you said, I had so many people that reached out to me and were like, I'm so glad that you did that. Or I actually loved your final statement. It showed humility and it showed what I needed. You know, I've stumbled before and I've been so upset about it, but the way you handled it made me realize that I don't need to be so hard on myself.
Amen. And I think that's a lesson that people can take away no matter what their occupation is, no matter what stage in life they're at, no matter what age they are, because I think we all need a big dose of grace and humility in our lives. Nobody's perfect. But I think you handled yourself with style and grace, and I am so honored that you were on the podcast. So my last question for you is something that I think you really live by, and that's break the mold. And I want to know, what exactly does that mean to you?
It means a lot to me, but what I want it to mean to other people is I just see society as always like putting these molds on people, telling them to fit into certain categories, telling them to act a certain way, to be a certain way. And whenever I'm acting as somebody else wants me to act or being what somebody else wants me to be, I'm miserable. So I really want everyone to just step into their truth and be their authentic selves. You know, if I walked on that stage being what I thought the judges wanted me to be, I wouldn't have acted how I acted. I wouldn't have walked how I walked. And I think that goes to show that since I made it so far being Alexis Lete and not being what the judges wanted, that's why I did well. That's why I succeeded, not because I was anything else but me. And so many people need to stop looking at others and comparing themselves and just start looking at themselves and what they have to offer, because everyone has something beautiful and different to offer. And I think that the minute you get hung up on somebody else and what they're doing is the minute that you lose your power and what you can accomplish with it.
I absolutely love that. And I could not agree with you more. And I think that this is just a launching pad for you. And I can't wait to see where you go next.
Oh, well, thank you so much. I enjoyed talking to you.
I know. Thank you so much for coming on the podcast. So there you have it. I hope you got just as much out of this episode as I did. Please take a second to subscribe, rate, and review the podcast. It helps us so much. And remember, you are more than whatever label's been placed upon you. We'll see you next week.